Yeah, hello, good evening, guys. So, in this tutorial, we are going to show how you can set up the Laravel framework on your system and start developing using the Laravel framework. So, as you might already have known, Laravel is a very good and rapidly rising PHP framework that you can use to easily develop web apps, which you can host on Apache and MySQL, or whichever server you prefer. Um, in this tutorial, we're going to try to cover what the Laravel framework is basically about, how you can set it up on your system, and we are going to write a basic Laravel application. So, if you're here, I am assuming you have read the tutorial on how to download Composer, the web servers, and all of that. So, I've currently set up my web server and the IDE using PSPad. I've also set up my current web server using the Uni server. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to um, move the, we are going to create a new Laravel project there. So, I'm going to cd into the Unix server directory. Cd c Unix server z and so www. So, normally in any WAMP, that is a web server that is using Apache MySQL, you usually have a root folder, which is also called at times the www folder, where your server files or applications go. For Uniserver, it is C Uniserver Z www. For WAMP, it is C WAMP www usually. So, once you're in this directory, the first thing you do when you're using uh, create project. So back to where we were starting. Sorry for the network disconnection. So like I was saying, a framework is basically set up or gives you a base to create the normal things that you usually require when you're developing a web app. For Laravel, there are three fundamental things that you need to know. First of all, Laravel is an MVC framework. In other words, Laravel is a model view controller framework. And what it enables you to do is to create your project structure in such a way that you have your models, which in essence are files that handle your data, where you basically perform your data retrieval or CRUD operations. Um, for those who don't know what CRUD operations is, CRUD is basically create, update, and delete statements that you usually make in order to manipulate data. The other thing is views. So your view files, as you know, are where you actually present content to your users or guests. So the last is controllers, and your controllers is where you handle the logic between the model and the view. So um, when you're starting with a Laravel web application, it's expected that you create your models first, followed by your views, and finally your controllers. Uh, that is why it's called MVC. Um, of course, at times you can decide to bend this, but we'll get to that. The other thing that you need to know about Laravel is Laravel's eloquent framework. If you visit laravel.com, um, you're going to see that one of the features that Laravel boasts about is the eloquent ORM. The eloquent ORM is an object relational mapping system that allows you to do better queries on your database. So you have a way of easily connecting to your database, easily handling relations between your models and entities, and a way of easily manipulating your data in order to present your data to your users. So the eloquent RM is documented a little bit on the the docs, the Laravel docs page, and I actually created a Git repository just for this documentation, for those who may be used to offline access to the doc. I'll go ahead and paste this in the group chat. Yep. So 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 unfortunately, it seems we are having a problem with. I'm having a problem with my network. Yes. Okay. So, I think this is better. So I'm going to cancel this and try to again. This provides a robust ORM which you can use to manipulate data while developing your web app. And the other thing that you also need to know about Laravel is how Laravel uses repositories, or should I say packages from other vendors. So what the thing that makes Laravel fantastic is it's it's a framework that brings the best frameworks, or that collects the best frameworks into one single framework and provides a simple interface or class that you can use to handle your data. Hello? Yeah. So so while our Laravel is still installing, like I was saying, it brings these frameworks together and creates a facade or an interface which you can use to easily access uh, these resources, these tools. So um, we're going to wait a little bit for this this for Laravel to be fully installed. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, you can ask on the group chat. So, like I was saying, this can take sometimes a very long time to install. So, why waiting for this? It might also be advisable to set up your IDE if you haven't one. I left the link for the user project inside this uh, your web root, basically your server web root. For Uniserver, your server web root is C Uniserver www. So as you can see, these are all dependencies that Laravel uses. And basically, what we are doing right now is that Composer is downloading these dependencies. So this is what I was trying to explain about Laravel and its usage of dependencies. Laravel uses the best frameworks and packages from different vendors such as Symfony, um, as well as Doctrine and a lot of other popular and powerful vendors. And once your application is set up, you're going to see this message, application key, and so on, saved successfully. What the application key basically is the encryption key, which is going to be used to encrypt sensitive data for your web application. So Laravel handles your security, a lot of your web application security by itself internally. So yeah, we have set up your our Laravel, and what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to open the directory on my PC. That is a Uniserver www. So go to your web root. You're going to see your test Laravel folder, which actually contains uh, your Laravel project. And if you want to test whether you have successfully downloaded the Laravel framework, you can simply run PHP artisan serve. Okay, first of all, you have to cd into your project directory and run PHP artisan serve. Now, once you run this command, uh, Laravel has a tiny HTTP server that once it receives request on this localhost port 8000, it basically serves your Laravel website. So if we visit localhost 8000, you're going to receive this popular message: you have arrived. And at this stage, what you have basically done is you have set up the basic skeleton that the Laravel framework comes with. In order to understand this code and delve into the framework, we are going to take a look at some of the Laravel files. So I'm going to head straight to my IDE and try to create a new project from this directory. Uh, yeah. So now with this, I will be able to view the folder structure of my Laravel application. Now, as you can see, we can already run our application, and when we run it, we receive this simple message: "You have arrived." So we want to see what exactly is making this message to show. So the first thing you need to know about how Laravel handles its application lifecycle is you need to look at the Bootstrap folder. You need to look at your app folder, and you need to look in your stats folder. So these are basically uh, the the major places you might be working on while building your web app. So the bootstrap start.php file contains the basic uh, configuration for your environment. So this is where Laravel handles or detects your environment such that you can easily be able to know when you are on a local server or on a production server. So you can simply run a command on your command prompts, let's say host name, to determine your host name. And once you determine your host name, what you simply need to do is to add it to this array. Once you have done that, now if you're not following, you can always ask a message on the group. Now, once you have done this, the next place you need to go is to your routes configuration file. So your routes are basically where you define what the users see when they point to a particular page or URL on your domain. So the default or the home URL for your domain is represented with this. And one thing that you should always note is that this should always be the last route configuration rule. To always ensure that this comes last because uh, Laravel uses a FIFO or first in first out approach to the route rules. So this basically means that having this type of route might override others that come before it. Um, we'll get more into this. You can see that when we say when we receive a request at localhost or the default domain, what we do is we return a function called make, which is under the view class, and the parameter we are sending to this function is called hello. So if you go into your views folders, you're going to see a file called hello.php. So when you say view colon make hello, what you are simply asking Laravel to do is to return this the content of this of this view, which is presumably inside the views folder. Um, if we wanted to return another file, we could simply create a new file here. Uh, let's see. Okay. So we could call our file test.php. And inside this test.php, we could basically write a PHP code. So let's save this as our code. Now, let's go back to our routes configuration file and create a new route. Call it tests, and let's create an anonymous function and return view make tests. Then close our route configuration. Now with this, let's head over to our web server and run /tests. Now you can see that instantly I have received um, I've received this message, welcome to the Laravel route test. So what we basically did is that once the routes engine, Laravel has a routing engine which actually handles how routes rules are processed and content is presented to the user. And that is what is calling the view class and making this view page. Now, the next thing is to actually understand what is happening inside a typical MVC app. So, what you have seen is basically how Laravel is making the hello page that you see at the default home page. If you wanted to exchange or interchange it, we could simply make hello on the test and actually make test as the default page. You will see that if I refresh this, I'll see a different, and if I go to test, I'll see a different thing. So this is how the default application you see that comes with Laravel is made. The next thing is to understand how you can build a model, a view, and a controller for your class. So if you head over to the Laravel docs page, you're going to see your getting started page, which talks about installation. And if you're at this stage, you should have created your projects with Laravel and set up your web server and all of that. The next thing after this is for you to understand your views and responses, for you to understand your controllers, and then for you to understand your migrations and model. Now, because Laravel is a model view controller framework, we're going to first start with migrations and modeling. So the first thing we want to do is let's create uh, a migration, which is basically creating a class that will create the tables for our database. Now, before this, you basically want to set up a default database for your project as you would normally do. So let's go to our databases and create a database and call it test Laravel. It's always advisable to use UTF-8 Unicode CI as your database collation because this is by default the the and you can basically configure this with your database credentials. In our case, our host is running at localhost 3309, which is what I set my Laravel, sorry, my SQL server on Uniserver to be running on. So localhost colon 3309. Username is root. It's of course not advisable at all to use uh, a root password in a production environment, but this is our local environment. So your password is the password you used while setting up your server. In the case of WAM, this is usually an empty password. So once you have set up this, the next thing you want to do is to create a migration file. So I'm going to stop the server and I'm going to run a command. Let's call it create um, let's call it create feed table. Um, so basically what we are doing right now is that we are creating a migration class. A migration class is simply a class that you can use to manage your database schema. So rather than going to my SQL workbench or PHP to create your database structure, you could simply do this with your code. And what Laravel allows you to do very easily is to manage different versions of your database such that you can roll back or upgrade, move back and forth between your different database versions more easily. If you want to see more help, you can always uh, run the help to see the different options for your migration. Um, so we are going to go right ahead to look at the database folder, migrations folder. Um, so unfortunately, this is not showing where it should be showing. So this is my first time of using this IDE, so I still don't understand certain things, but obviously it doesn't handle refreshing of files very well. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the migration class that has been created for us by default. Now, what we are going to do here is we are going to create our database schema. Um, just like your create table statements, you can write schema create the name of your table. Let's call it feed, and you can create a function, anonymous function that handles how your table is created, and with you pass a default variable called table, which is actually used to create your tables. So under this, let's have table increments ID, uh, table string feed 140, and let's call it posts, and then let's have table timestamps. Um, and then in our down function, let's simply say schema uh, drop feed. In order to actually learn more about what we just did, uh, you can always go to schema builder. The schema builder documentation shows you a lot of things that you can do with Laravel schema class, and how you can actually use that. So if you have any problem, you can always refer back to this. That being said, um, we just created our migration class, and in order to see this come into the database, you can always run one command, which is called php artisan migrates. And what this command does is that it simply tries to run uh, your migration class um, commands, and here you can see that my anonymous function was not closed properly, and this is the ideal way to close this. So I'm going to try to run the command again, and if you see migrated your table, then you know that you have successfully run your migration. And if you come back to your table, you're going to see two tables. The migrations table, which Laravel used to actually manage your migration versions and all of that. And you're going to also see your feeds table. So if we look at the structure, you're going to notice we have ID, which is auto increment. We have a post, which is varchar 140, and we have created that and updated that as timestamp. So when you use the schema table timestamps, what Laravel does for you is to create these two fields, and the post field uses Vaca 140 because in the we instructed it to use a string, and the we set the length of the Vaca to 140 here. So the next thing we are going to do is we are going to create our model. As before, you can run PHP artisan. Um, um, okay, so in order to create your model, you simply go to your models class and your models folder and create your escalate feed uh, dot php. Yeah. So inside your uh, feed.php class, make sure that your class is named feed and extends eloquent. Now, your model basically allows you to define how how your database or how your table works. In this particular scenario, um, we need to instruct Laravel where the table is via the table variable. By default, Laravel will use the name of your file, or rather your class, to actually determine um, your table. So even if we remove this, comment this out, it will be able to detect that feeds is the name of our database. But just in case, you can always write the name here. Uh, your hidden shows the files that the fields that you don't want to to be shown in your model, like for instance the user password or the remember token. As is concerned with the user table, the you don't want this field to be public. um, with this, we have made basically a very tiny model, and we can go ahead and create a view on how this data is going to be manipulated. So what I'm thinking about right now is a simple page where an anonymous user can simply visit and simply type any stuff they want to type, as long as it is limited to 140 characters. So we are going to create a view file, and we are going to call this I'm going to call this file um, feed.blade.php. Um, I'm going to explain what this file is in a bit. So basically, Laravel comes with a templating system templating engine called Blade. And what Blade allows you to do is to easily create views that you can easily manage. So let's look at the docs. So this is called uh, and you can see an example. Okay, sorry about that. So, let's say and let's say we also have an input uh, type equals submit for the user to simply put put the name of the content they want to display, and let's say that we are going to pass some data to this our view, and inside that data, what you simply have is feeds. So we are going to do for each here. So for each feeds as feed, we want to create a line with the feed content. So at here we see uh, feed posts, and after this we end for each. So this line assumes that we have basically um, passed a variable or data called feeds, which contains a list of all the feeds, uh, all the posts that have been made on this our web application. Now, the next thing we want to do is to actually send this data to this view and to also process this input that is made via this form. So in order to do that, where we go to is the controllers folder. So we could just use a PHP artisan controller, make let's call it a feed controller. Um, and let's add this to our projects. So you can basically see a template for your normal controller. But what we want to do here is to actually handle how Laravel responds to our controller. So the first thing we want to do is in the index, we want to return the view page, and that is to return view make fit. And in the create, we want to process the user's input and insert this into the feed the table, and maybe return a message that the user's feed has been posted successfully, if necessary. So here, what I'm simply going to do is going to use the feed. Let's create a new feed model, and let's set the post to input get uh, feed input. If we go back to our inputs, you'll see what we actually named it is feed content. So this is what we want to put here, feed content. And then we save our model, and we return we return this model. Or we return all feeds. Um, so the correct way to do this is we're going to use view make feed with data feeds feed all. So what this simply means is feed all returns a collection of all feeds on our table and passes it as a variable called feeds to the view feed. Which handles creating or adding new feeds to the database and returning existing feeds to our view file. The next thing we want to do is to configure our routes to actually display our data. So basically, your routes should normally point to either your view files or your controllers. So in this case, we are going to open the routes configuration file, and we are going to add new routes, git feed, and here we are going to type uh, feed controller at index, and then we are going to type route post feed feed controller at create. So with this, we should be able to fire up our application and test to see whether we can actually add a new feed in our application. So I'm going to go straight to feed. And one of the first things you can see is undefined variable feeds. So this means that this variable was not passed to this view, which is our feed. Uh, so normally uh, this is this is uh, this is the eloquent class that we are using here. And if you want to be sure of how exactly the query builder is used, you could always got so the eloquent ORM page contains a lot of documentation on how you could retrieve your models. And as you can see, this is how we created our our feed model. And under here, you could also see other examples. And what we are looking for right now is how to retrieve all collections. So it seems our first method was actually correct. So I this almost. So in order to understand this, um, the most likely explanation that you have here is that the all method is returning false because we don't have any data in our feeds table. So we need to have a check on the feed.blade to actually check if this feeds is actually set. Our read this div at all. So we say as if it sets feeds, um, then we do all this, and at else I could simply show a message. Um, there are no feeds to display at this time. Why not have it? Then we have end if. So if we open our feeds page again, you should be able to see something like this. So let's add a feed and see whether we actually get something inserted into our database. So let's see, there you go. This via the wrong method. This was supposed to be sent using posts, but this method to posts was not sent in the first place. So in order to handle this, we add the parameter method equals posts, and uh, okay, let's see what's happening here. So you can see that we are currently having a problem. So we have our there you go inserted. It is showing here. So it means we are not retrieving all the feeds correctly. So we go back to our controller to see how we actually retrieving these feeds. And uh, we need to send this collection to an array. Uh, but just to be sure, you can always debug your app by deciding to do a data dump where you want. So let's do feeds equals and then um, feeds. Let's just die exports. So Eloquent class supports a to array method, which you could use to convert your collection and I'm to array. This was not being sent to that again and see. So this shows that we actually send in this feed, but it's not being received at the views. So in order to track this problem, uh, we need to go to our feed and check whether our code is being converted correctly and processed correctly. So here we are checking if the feed is set, and if it's not, we iterate over the feeds and display them. And if it's not, we simply say there are no feeds. So here, the Laravel framework is showing that we are not able to send the feed data. Um, so let's try something. Let's try feeds. Uh, so you can see that now it's showing something. Uh, so what this simply does, right? So let's know where the real problem is. So that's to be sure. When you're making a view, you should be able to send uh, your data um, using using the with method, or uh, using a magic method, which is where you pass the name of the variable that you want to create your view with directly, and the with attachment. So here, you can see that why this was not working before was because we're using the with data, but it will as well work with just this. So we'll simply update our code. Yep. And once we save this, we should have a very functional application that users can simply come and add their own feeds. So this is an example of a working Laravel application, and we could actually simply style this form, and we have an amazing web application. So in this, we have tried to simply show some basic MVC concepts, how you can set up your models, your views, and your controllers, as well as handle some common errors that you would encounter while starting with Laravel. Always remember, the place to come when you're confused is the documentation. You can download the Laravel offline documentation, which I have created for Laravel 4.1. I will update this shortly to contain the documentation for 4.2. And if you have any problem, you can always post your questions on the PHP Niger Devs group. If you're not currently on the PHP Niger Devs group and you're interested in learning PHP, you should try to join instantly. And with that, I think we have come to the conclusion of this tutorial, and I thank everyone who has contributed to reaching this point, both those who were able to view the tutorial live and those who were not. If you have any questions, you can reach me on the PHP Niger Dev groups. And thank you for listening in. Bye.